Welcome to Boots on the Ground, your go-to podcast for all things retail and real estate. I'm your host, Ryder Richards, and today we're diving into the confounding world of commercial real estate vocabulary. Joining me is Lacy Beasley, president of Retail Strategies, who will help us to decode the jargon and provide insights into terms that can either make or break a deal. Whether you're a seasoned pro or a newbie like me, this episode is packed with valuable information to help you navigate the complex landscape of commercial real estate. As I'm kind of a newbie in the real estate world, I'm having some trouble with some of the terminology. So I thought, being the president of our company, maybe you could come on and help me out a little bit.
Yeah, we'd be happy to talk through those. And it's like any industry that's out there, there's alphabet soup, right? So we specialize in commercial real estate and community development. And what I've learned is whenever we visit with communities, a lot of times, if they're talking about other initiatives they have, like their fire department, their law enforcement, they're throwing acronyms at me that I don't understand at all. And our industry is the same way. So we have a lot of odd phrases that we use. And what I've learned from our team here, and by being in this space for about 20 years, is that it applies immediate credibility in a conversation if you can weave in the right deal terms and the right language. And so our whole team at Retail Strategies, they know this language pretty well. And there's some that are pretty funny, quite frankly, once you start boiling them down. And then some are a little more complicated.
Okay. So we go to these conferences, and as I walk through there, I can hear people start bringing up all sorts of terms. So what are some sort of common ones? Say I've got a property at a shopping center. How can I talk about that to make it seem like I know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so a couple things are, when you're talking in a shopping center, you want to describe, is the site on the end cap or in line? And that just simply means where it lays in the shopping center. Some people might use the term that it's in the elbow, and that's going to be in the corner of the shopping center, right? So those are quick phrases for end cap, in line, or the elbow. And then you'll hear the phrase, is the site on a hard corner? And that basically just means, is there a traffic signal there so that people can have easy ingress and egress into the site, and they can stop at a traffic light and be able to easily access it. One of my favorite terms in the industry is it on the AM side of the road or the PM side of the road? And that's one of them that's pretty basic once you start to realize what it means. Essentially, if you're a coffee shop, then what that coffee shop wants to do is capture the traffic that is going from their residence, where they live, to where they're going to work or where they're going to school. So we as consumers are actually quite lazy. We want to take a right turn into the shopping center or the coffee shop that we're going through the drive-through, and then we want to take a right turn out of that. We don't want to take a left turn and cross traffic. And once you start to understand these terms, you'll see them in everything that you're doing as a consumer as you're shopping. That's the AM side of the road with the coffee shops. And then think about the PM side of the road. Who's an obvious retailer that might want to be on the going home side? That's going to be your grocery store, all right? So they want to find where the residents are and how they can take a right turn into the grocery store on their way home from work, and then take a right turn out to get back to their neighborhood. So that is a quick term on AM and PM side of the road.
Okay, thanks, Lace. Let's see. What about, I don't know, I hear people also at the conferences talking, they're trying to describe something like, I don't know, GLA. They'll throw out acronyms like this, and maybe to describe one of the properties. What are those kind of terms that people use to describe the space itself?
Well, gross leasable area is the GLA. So you'll hear that in some cases, and then a lot of times it's going to boil down to what the rent and lease terms are, right? So you're going to hear a rate per square foot, and then you'll hear the question, is that gross or not? And gross means, is it going to incorporate the triple nets? Triple nets are taxes, insurance, and CAM. So to add another acronym in, CAM is Common Area Maintenance. So you can negotiate the rent in a lot of cases, but typically your triple nets don't have as much wiggle room in the negotiation because those are set with insurance, taxes, and the common area maintenance.
What if I want to talk about the use of the property? Like, I hear terms like QSR. Can you describe to me what makes up a QSR, what that is?
Yeah, QSR is used a lot in our industry, and that simply is a fast food restaurant, but the acronym stands for quick service restaurant. So we find that a lot as well. And some of the communities I visit with will say, I need a nice sit down eatery. Well, that could be a lot of different things, but in our industry, they're typically broken down into a fine dining restaurant. It's going to be a casual dining, a fast casual, QSR, or beverage. So when you're talking about an eatery, then let's really break that down, what style it is. So fine dining, typically a duration is going to be an hour and a half, 2 hours. Think about your nice steakhouse. You're going to have casual dining, which is where you come in and you have table service. You're typically going to leave a tip and you're there for about an hour. You're going to have fast casual, which think about that more almost diner style, where you walk up and you get your food and then you seat yourself and there's no table service. Typically duration there is around, it can be anywhere from 20 minutes to 45 minutes, and that's a bit lower price point ticket item. And typically fast casual are not going to serve alcohol. Sometimes they will with beer, but typically not, where those other concepts will. And then we're going to go into QSR, quick service restaurants. So this is a drive-through. This is a super quick duration, 10 minutes or less in most cases. And then you get into beverage, and beverage is going to be things like smoothies, coffee, just wine only. So that's really the breakdown you're going to see in the restaurant space.
All right, cool. Well, let's see. I've also heard a couple other terms, and I'm going to throw them all out here and just let you put them together for me. I hear people talking about REITs. I hear things like TI. We've already talked about being an end cap, but I've also heard of cap rate. There's lots of hats in this business, I guess.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So TI is going to be your tenant improvement allowance. So a lot of landlords with new construction will deliver the box to the tenant as a plain vanilla shell, and then the tenant will ask for TI. And essentially, if it's a retailer that has locations all over the country, they have a standard prototype and design standards that they want to build out for. And so they will ask the landlord to give them those funds, and then they will build it out to their own design standards. So that's, furniture, fixtures, and equipment are another thing. You'll hear FF&E that can be negotiated in the lease. A REIT is a real estate investment trust. And this essentially means that owners will invest in this trust and they will be able to take profits off of the interest from the investment in the real estate. So that's going to be a REIT. Let's see, what was the other one you brought up?
Do REITs own shopping centers? What is the real estate investment that they invest in?
So, yes, the investors will come in and they'll basically purchase certificates of ownership in the trust. And then the REIT will go purchase real estate, and then they will give distributions from the profits of that back to the investors. And the great thing about this is it's not subject to corporate tax income, so long as it complies with the tax requirements of the REIT. So it's a great way for shareholders of the REIT to invest without some of the tax penalties they might see from other investments.
So the other one I was asking about was a cap rate. What is a cap rate?
Cap rates are really important, and it's essentially a metric that the investors can look at a shopping center to see what the return can be. So it's going to be calculated by dividing the property's NOI, which is another acronym we use, net operating income, by its asset value. And it's typically an assessment of the yield of the property over 1 year. So the lower the cap rate, the less risky the investors look at the property and the better it is for that reason. So low cap rates are good, and the higher the cap rate, the more risk there is and the more volatile it could potentially be for the investors. And that's what you're looking for. So cap rates can vary quite a bit because if you think about exit strategy, everything you do in this industry is about, well, a lot of the money is made on buying and selling. And cap rate is the metric for looking for buying and selling in that valuation. So critical driver of our entire industry is around this. And so, for instance, in a smaller market, maybe you have a shopping center, and that shopping center might have a higher cap rate because it's a less populous area, and there's a risk you might not be able to backfill that vacancy as quickly. So that would make your cap rate go up. Another thing that would increase the cap rate on a shopping center might be a tenant that is not well capitalized. So sometimes the question's asked, well, wouldn't it be better to just put a local mom and pop in this vacant space in the shopping center so that you're collecting some rent, because some rent is better than no rent? And that isn't always the case. You might want to leave that vacancy there and fill that space with a tenant that has a great credit rating, because that is going to reduce your cap rate or reduce your risk, and the value of the shopping center will increase, and that will make investors happy. So it's not as obvious as what might meet the eye whenever you're looking at a shopping center. This is also a value add play, which is very popular in our industry right now because we're dealing with unprecedented lows in vacancy rates, one of the highest occupancy rates we've ever seen in our industry. And so a lot of people are looking at how they can acquire shopping centers right now and change the tenant mix, repave the parking lot, redo the lighting, and improve the facades of the retailers, but then also look at ways to improve the tenant mix for a better cap rate that then they can either hold that shopping center or sell it. The way they improve the cap rate is by getting retailers in there with a better financial backing. Does all that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. And it's, once again, we've talked before about investors and how that drives so many decisions, and this idea of the risk and that coming into the cap rate. And, because it is capitalization and it is financing. And so it's always a little more complicated than it looks from the outside.
Absolutely. It's much more complicated. So to just summarize it, it is the NOI divided by the property value, and that is your percentage.
Okay, cool. Well, I think another term so I think we know for these investors, there's ROI, return on investment, but I've also heard this term LOI. What is an LOI?
Yeah, a letter of intent. And so this
not
is
the same at all.
Well, a letter of intent is well described by my colleague, Elliot Cook, who you've heard talk on this podcast as well, but I like the way he describes it. It's essentially like dating before you get married, right? An LOI is the landlord and the occupier of the space or the tenant saying, here are our deal terms. Here's what I agree to with price, rate per square foot, triple nets, which we talked about earlier, tenant improvement allowance or TI. All that is negotiated in the LOI. Lease terms. So typically what you want, you might start with a 5-year term and then have 4 options to renew that lease term at maybe 5 years each, right? So you're going to look at the terms, and basically this is a way to get the deal moving forward before you involve the attorneys, because we all know the attorneys are going to bog it down, and that's going to be at the lease stage, which comes afterwards. So in the process, the LOI is first, then it gets approved in the REC, which is a real estate committee, another acronym. Okay, it'll get approved by REC, and then it will go to the attorneys for the lease.
Okay. Let's see, are there any other terms you can think of that I might need to know if I'm sort of trying to look like I know what I'm talking about in this space? Is there anything I could do to really turn somebody off? Is it just using these terms incorrectly?
Well, there's a few phrases you'll hear a lot. You'll hear hair on the deal. Hair on the deal. That means it's complicated. And our industry doesn't like complicated because time kills all deals, another phrase you hear a lot. So think about the urgency of stuff. Hair on the deal is another term. And those are two that come up quite a bit in just average phrasings. But yeah, I think we've covered a lot today. And that might be a wrap. I think maybe on another session, we can go into more detail on what is included in an LOI.
Okay. Well, Lace, thanks very much for joining us today. And yeah, this is Ryder Richards and Lacy Beasley from Retail Strategies.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into Boots on the Ground. We hope you found today's episode, well, maybe not enlightening, but at least demystifying. And perhaps now you feel a little more confident in your commercial real estate conversations. Special thanks, of course, to Lacy Beasley, President of Retail Strategies, for sharing her expertise. Remember, understanding the right terminology can give you a significant edge in this industry. And if you're not comfortable with that, perhaps employing an expert in this field is another option for you. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, you know the drill, right? Please subscribe, rate, review, share. Stay tuned also for more episodes where we bring you the latest trends and insights into retail and real estate. Until next time, keep your boots on the ground and your eye on the horizon.